What's up? So Pokemon Sword and Shield is here, and today guys I'm coming at you with my very first video. Now while I'm super excited for this game and have already been having a ton of fun with it, there's always one issue that comes up at the start of a new playthrough, and that is what Pokemon to catch. You see, I'm someone who really hates to catch a new Pokemon, level it up, spend a whole bunch of time with it, only to find out that it's not viable in the long game. And so what I wanted to do to solve that issue for you guys is look at 10 Pokemon that you can get early in the game that are incredible. These are Pokemon that you should be able to use all the way through to the end of the game. And you can find all of them before the first gym. And most importantly, the last thing I wanted to say before we do get into this is I'm actually doing a giveaway for a copy of Pokemon Shield or Sword. So if you want to be entered in to win that, all you have to do is be a subscriber of the channel and then watch the video all the way through and comment what you thought was the best Pokemon on this list. And also the worst. With all that being said though, let's get into it. So coming in at number 10, I wanted to start this video off with a Pokemon that you are going to see from the very beginning of the game. Now, apart from starters and starter battles, the very first wild Pokemon you're going to encounter is a Squavit. You don't want that. There's also a few other Pokemon on the first route, things like Feebles, but Rukia is one that I highly recommend. So Rukia is kind of the placeholder, generic starter flying Pokemon. It's a fun, cute Pokemon that has pretty whatever stats. Now, it gets its first evolution at 18, evolving into Corvisquire. At this point, it becomes a fairly good Pokemon and is actually super useful for the first gym. But the reason that I really like this Pokemon is for its final evolution. Now, Rukia takes a bit of grinding to get up here, but at level 38, it evolves into Corviknight, a Pokemon a lot of you guys have probably already seen that is Steel flying. And that alone should really be enough to show you why this Pokemon is so good. Now, it's got a total base stat of 495 with high HP and defense, but again, that typing is what's really interesting. Only weak to fire and electric, this thing has so many resistances. So it's resistant to normal, flying, psychic, steel, dragon, and fairy. It's 4 times resistant to grass and bug, and completely immune to ground and poison. So while Rukia is a Pokemon that might take a little bit of grinding, I think it's something that is absolutely worth going after and will help you all the way through to the end of the game. And now moving on to number 9, a bit of an interesting Pokemon is Blipbug. So when I first saw this thing, I thought, you know, your classic early bug type Pokemon, probably gonna get its final evolution at level 10 and then be trashed by level 20. But actually, that's not the case at all. At level 10, it gets its first evolution, turning into a psychic bug, and then its final into Orbeetle at level 30. And Orbeetle has actually got some pretty solid stats. It's got total base stats of 505 with high defense and special defense, but also it learns Light Screen and Reflect at level 10, or as soon as you evolve it into Dottle. And as a psychic bug type, it's a little bit interesting. It's a psychic type that is good against other psychic types, which is very useful against a certain rival. That's also good against dark type. Now, it's also certainly weak to a lot, but fortunately it is pretty tanky. So overall, it's a Pokemon that I didn't really think I would like, that I actually gotta say is kind of impressive. Now moving on to number 8, we have Seedot. So Seedot has a very low chance to spawn on the way to the professor's house on Route 2. I think it's something like less than 5%. I've only managed to find one, but it's actually a very cool early game Pokemon. While nothing special in and out of itself, this Pokemon evolves into Nuzleaf at level 14. As a grass Pokemon, it's going to be useful against the second gym, as well as getting through the cave before the first gym. But the thing that makes catching Seedot so worth it is you can have him fully evolved before the first gym. So spoilers on the first gym, if you want to skip like 30 seconds ahead. It's a grass type gym, and there is actually a leaf stone which can be found here. As soon as you get to the city with the grass gym, you're going to be prompted to go up to the left towards this hill that has a Dynamax Pokemon drawing on it. And on the way up there, you can actually find a hidden leaf stone. So as soon as you have Nuzleaf up to level 14, you can just go and straight evolve him into a Shiftry, which is then going to give him the ability to relearn Leaf Blade, Sucker Punch, and overall he's just going to be an early game devastator. On top of that, having a dark type is going to be super useful for one of the recurring fights in the game, so I highly recommend this play. It's just really fun having a fully evolved version of this Pokemon so early. Now, moving on to number 7, we have Pancham. So this is our first Pokemon on the list that can be found in the wild area. Now, I feel like I could go on for 10 minutes about the wild area, but basically there's all sorts of different biomes, I guess you will, that are ever changing, and there's like hundreds of different Pokemon here. And anyways, Pancham is one that you can find pretty easily. Pancham evolves into its final form, Pangoro, at level 32, and as a dark fighting type has an insanely high attack. Base stats 495 with a 124 attack gives this guy a lot of power. And as I said before, with one of the recurring fights in the game, having a dark type is going to be huge. And yet another interesting dark type that you might want to consider picking up is actually Zigzagoon, or should I say Galarian Zigzagoon. So in this version of the game, this Pokemon is dark normal. And while Galarian Zigzagoon and Linoon are nothing special, its final evolution is worth talking about. This Pokemon can be found on Route 3 just after Motostoke City before the cave. Once you evolve Zigzagoon into its final form Obstagoon, he becomes an absolute beast. You have to level him up to 35 during the night, but once you do, he will turn into Obstagoon, having base stats of 520. He's a Pokemon that doesn't really excel in any area, but is overall very well-rounded and pretty good stats. And again, is a dark type. Now moving on to our number 5 spot, also found at Route 3, or also the cave right after it, is Roly-Coly. So I kind of like to think of Roly-Coly as the Gen 8 Geodude. So he starts as a rock type, his second form is Rock Fire, and then final, again Rock Fire, is Colossal. With an interesting rock fire typing, this is actually a pretty good Pokemon. One thing I will say is he's going to be super useful for the 3rd gym, and that's especially true if you choose Rukia. Colossal has base stats of 510 with very high HP and defense. And also he can learn some pretty good rock moves like Ancient Power and Stealth Rock. Now moving on to number 4, I want to talk about an electric type. So right after the cave we were just talking about, and right before the town with the first gym battle, there is a big electric area. Now there's all sorts of electric type Pokemon here that may help you out with the 2nd gym, but the one that stood out to me the most was actually electric. I wouldn't say he's necessarily the best Pokemon, but as an electric special sweeper, fairly good. He evolves into Manectric at level 25, giving him base stats of 475. Not my favorite Pokemon, but of all the electrics, probably the one that I liked the most if you're looking for something to help you with that 2nd gym. But now for our number 3 spot, I want to go back to the wild area. So while it's fair to say that ice typing isn't the best, I think that this is a type that is very beneficial in this game. Having an ice type might be super helpful for both your first and last gym encounters, as well as maybe some things after your 8 gym badges. So for that reason, I did want to talk about a worthwhile ice Pokemon. Now in the snowy wild area, you can actually find a few different ice types. You can find a Snorunt, which will get you Glalie. You can also find a Swinub, which is a pretty good option. But the one that stood out to me, and while I really don't like this Pokemon, is Vanillite. It doesn't evolve into Vanillux until 47, but does have pretty good base stats at 535. Actually, the highest on this whole list. Swinub and Snorunt are also great, but I found them a little bit more difficult to find, and Vanillite is like everywhere. So while ice might not be the most desirable type, if it is something you're looking for, this is a Pokemon I would recommend. Now, moving on to number 2, we've got a Pokemon that I'm actually very excited about. In the last video, I kind of talked bad about this guy, but I gotta take it back, and this is Dreadnought. So you can actually find the pre-evolution to Dreadnought on Route 2, again on the way to the professor's house. This is Choodle, and while it starts as a water type, at level 22, it evolves into Dreadnought, a water rock. Certainly not good for taking on grass Pokemon, but super helpful for some other battles. He's got base stats of 485, but an insanely high attack of 115. On top of that, the fact that he levels up so early makes for him being a great mid-game Pokemon. I didn't really want to take this Pokemon on because I just thought it looked bad, but as soon as I did, I quickly realized he was one of the best Pokemon on my team. He's literally just an absolute tank, and is a Pokemon I really, really recommend now. Plus, you could get him so early. And he's also a great water type replacement if you don't go with Sobble. But ladies and gentlemen, moving on to our number 1 spot. It's actually going to be a Gen 1, and that's Vulpix. So this is not your Alolan Vulpix, that's ice type, but just straight up good old Kanto Vulpix. Vulpix can be found both on Route 3 as well as in the wild area. And while Vulpix isn't one of the greatest Pokemon, Ninetales is pretty desirable. But I mean, come on, it's gotta be pretty late into the game before we can find a Firestone, right? Well, actually, no, not at all. So there is actually a Firestone located in the wild area. Now the first big city is known as Motosoke, and to the right of that, if you go down, you will go down to the riverbed. Literally all you have to do is just cross that bridge and go to the left. There's a few pipes and there is a Pokeball sitting there, which is a Firestone. Now I didn't get this until after beating the first gym, so this area may not be accessible on your first run through the wild area, but I'm pretty sure that it is. Regardless though, you can get a Ninetales at the very least by after the first gym. And with the Remember system being in every single Poke Center, you can literally have a Ninetales with Flamethrower, Fire Blast, and Will-O-Wisp, everything you ever want at the very start of the game. 505 base stats and a really nice special Fire Sweeper. And especially for those who do not go with the Fire Starter, this is an absolute must for your team. And that's my favorite early game Pokemon. Anyways, with all that said, that's going to be our list. So again, if you guys want to get in on that giveaway, all you got to do is be a subscriber of the channel and comment what you thought was the best and worst Pokemon on this list. And one of you guys are going to be going home with a copy of Pokemon Sword or Shield. Anyways though, thank you guys so much for watching. I'll talk to you later, and peace out, you freaking nerds.